If you want to understand why breaking through fear is so hard and what our relationship to fear is, then the following video from my trusted Pathway to Purpose blueprint is for you. Check it out. Okay, so welcome back, and in this video we're going to be talking about breaking through fear. So, you know, one of the biggest fears that we have, and there are many, is fear of the unknown, especially when we are, you know, looking at defining some kind of new purpose in our life. We're looking to maybe make a radical change in our lives, maybe completely change career, maybe start a business, maybe become an artist or an entertainer, or, you know, whatever it is that you're looking to do, that you're going to find within your heart's desire. This is going to be something completely new for you, and that fear of the unknown is certainly going to crop up. So hopefully in this video I'm going to help you understand a little bit more about what fear is, you know, where does it come from, and hopefully we'll come through some sort of transformation where we have a different relationship with fear. And this isn't going to happen overnight, but there are several techniques that I'm going to share with you that we can keep working on throughout the weeks, the months, the years, which I myself still work on too. So why are people not following their dreams? Why are they not following their heart's desire? Why are they stuck in careers that they just don't love? Why are they stuck in relationships after years when they really understand that it's probably not a good idea? It's because of fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what's different. Doing something that is outside our comfort zone. This is something that we'll talk about here, and we will start to talk about more over the next few videos. You know, our comfort zone sounds nice, doesn't it? Comfort. You know what comfort means to me? Comfort means unfulfillment, lack of desire, lethargy. These are the kind of words that come to my mind when I think of being stuck in comfort. Should be a nice thing, right? Comfort, but it's not. It's just a position that we keep ourselves in, our ego keeps ourselves in, to keep us safe, to know that we have some kind of predictable future. Even if we know that that's not going to make us happy, it's not going to bring us any fulfillment. Having that sense of control is what we want, right? Well, it's not what we want, it's what we think we want, because our higher self, our real true self, doesn't want that at all. Our true self wants to expand and be creative and do, you know, whatever it wants. And I'm sure for you, after going through the videos so far, some fears are starting to crop up. Well, Rob, yeah, you know, this purpose thing, it all sounds great. I'd really like to find my purpose, and I'd like to completely change my life. I'd really like to move on and do something completely different, something creative, something that I really, really want to do passionately. But, you know, is this really for me? You know, that but word will come up again. But is it really for me? You know, my situation is different, Rob, right? You know, this has happened to me and that's happened to me. And, you know, so that means that I'm just this kind of person. This is the way that I think. That's never going to change. That's bullshit. That kind of talk is bullshit, because thinking that you're different, you know, thinking that you're a victim, that you're at the effect of everything, is absolute nonsense, because we actually make a choice to do this, or decision, should I say, as I've said before. I mean, think about a certain situation where maybe you know, you're out walking and someone starts to run towards you looking very angry with a knife in your hand, with a knife in their hand, should I say. Now for me, I know that would be terrifying, right? I'm sure it would for you. It'd be really terrifying. Going through my mind would be, you know, I'm going to die. What's going to happen to my family? I'm not going to be able to fulfill everything that I ever wanted to do. You know, this is the end for me. I can't believe it's happening like this. A real fear would come over me, right? But is that the actual truth of the situation? What if I was a special forces person from the army with, you know, special training, and I'm put in the same situation and someone is running towards me with that knife? Are they feeling any fear? Or are they thinking, which of the 10 ways to kill this person right now with one move shall I use as they approach me? Is there any fear there? Or is there just conditional training, right? Just reactions that will come automatically? And, you know, for me personally, afterwards from that event, I might go through my life always being scared when I'm out. When I see a man that looks like that person, maybe they've got dark hair, a dark beard, and whenever I see someone with dark hair and a dark beard, I tense up, I get scared. There's some conditioning in there within me. Whereas for the other guy in the special forces, maybe things come up for him in the future like, oh, I wish I'd have used the other move to kill the guy. You know, maybe that would have been the best way. Maybe next time I need to use a different move. The point is here that there is actual no truth to fear. It's of your own making. It's how you perceive a particular situation. And that can come from a couple of things. I mean, also, think about something like people who have an irrational fear of snakes and spiders. I don't particularly mind them at all. Neither do I love them. I'm kind of indifferent to them. But, you know, for someone who loves snakes, you know, likes to have them around them, likes to keep them as pets, sits there stroking them as they feeding them mice, that person has no fear whatsoever of snakes. Yet there can be another person who is perfectly rational in every other aspect of their life, yet on seeing a snake, you know, they completely shut down. Maybe they even faint. Their whole body shuts down just at the sight of a snake, not even actually even being near it. Maybe it's even behind glass, you know, thick glass like this, yet they end up fainting because there's such a fear. What's the truth in that situation? You know, there is no actual truth around fear. It's all your own making. Now, when we look at these situations like someone with a knife, or, you know, maybe a snake that could be poisonous. Now, maybe there is some, you know, prehistoric conditioning there with us that's, you know, trying to keep us safe, right? You know, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, that kind of conditioning that comes from that like reptilian brain is actually very important to us. You know, it gives us that fight or flight response, which is important in certain situations, of course, to protect us. But what are the things that we are actually really fearful of in everyday living when we take snakes and spiders and knife-wielding men out of the equation, which, let's be honest, happen very, very rarely in our lives? Well, we have things like fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough to do something new, fears around money, very big one for everyone, right? Or, you know, fears around, well, I want to do something different, but I've got no idea actually how to do it. Now, these fears are common to everyone, right? They're common to everyone. I experience these, you experience these. You know, people you might look up to who you think are, you know, these amazing, confident people, business owners, they all have fears. They've all worked through fears, and they'll still have fears now to break through, to get to the next level. And when we're faced with these fears, quite often we'll say, well, you know, do I really need to make a change? Okay, I'm comfortable, you know, I'm comfortable in this relationship. Do I really need to change it? I'm comfortable in this job, I'm earning a decent salary. Do I really need to have a look into the future and try and do something that I don't really know what the outcome will be? I'm comfortable here, I'm not that happy, sure, but I'm paying the bills, right? So there's no real reason to change. Well, if we think that, aren't we selling ourselves so short? And repressing our higher self is going to cause us so much suffering. Maybe you can relate to this. I mean, for me personally, going through 2 careers, which, you know, when I first started them, I quite liked, but then quite quickly understood that they weren't for me. 10 years as a scientist, 10 years in corporate sales and marketing. You know, going through the motions, really selling myself short. And even though I didn't know what my higher self really wanted to do, I knew that there was something more than what I was doing, but I never ever listened to that. I repressed it, I resisted it, I pushed it down, and it caused me so much suffering in my life and was definitely one of the contributing factors into why I started using drugs and alcohol in the first place. Now, if you're just tolerating your life at the moment, what kind of life really is that? I've gone through so many years of that toleration of everything in my life. You know, what happens is we start to become a victim of life. This is certainly my experience, becoming quite bitter, resentful of other people, but also an inner resentment as well. And a little bit of a feeling of hatred and guilt and resentment towards myself. This is certainly no way to live your life, but repressing what your higher self really wants certainly leads you in that direction. Maybe you've experienced some of these things yourself in your life. Now really is the time that we need to take action. Now, for all of us, it's going to be different things that we have fear of in our moment, in the moment right now. So, you know, for you, it could simply just be that fear of having to go through some kind of change, fear of what other people are going to think of you, some fear of judgment. If you've got some kind of inkling or idea of what you want to do, or maybe even don't, there's some fear that if you do make a change and you get out of your comfort zone, that, you know, you may fail, and there's some kind of fear around that. You know, for me, I've gone through so many changes in my life at the moment. I've broke through so many fears. I've got so far out of my comfort zone. But I would guess that for me at the moment, there'd be one for me, which is the next thing that I really need to do to push beyond my comfort zone at the moment, is to do a live event around my coaching, around finding purpose. So I'm very comfortable making online courses. I'm very comfortable doing one-to-one coaching and group coaching, but I haven't yet done any live events. And that's something that I'd certainly like to do. But, you know, before I would say that I cannot do things like this, you know, but now I know that I will have to step into that fear. You know, for me, the things that are coming up are, well, you know, will people find me interesting enough? Will people book to come to a live event? You know, will I have good enough content to share with them? Even though I know that I'm very capable in what I do, and people respond so well in my private and group coaching and give me such amazing feedback, and I can see the transformation I make in people's lives. So why would I have a fear of doing a live event? Yet it still comes up for me, and it's something that I have to work on. But, you know, to do something new, it's nothing to do with you know, the how to do it. So for me, for instance, setting up a live event, I would have to understand how to set all that up. I know that I could probably book someone to help me out with that. I have lots of people who do live events, who I know within the sort of self-development community that I work with, that I can get advice from, that I can get help from. So, you know, how to do it, I know isn't going to be a problem, but it's working on the fears that we have and getting out of our comfort zones, which is what we really need to do to move forward. So what actually keeps us within that comfort zone? What, you know, where does this fear really come from? There's two main places. One is from our preconditioning, as we've talked about in videos before, like the age of conversations and being on autopilot. A lot of our precondition that comes often from when we're children is just within our subconscious, and we act automatically. These fears come up instantly, judgments come up instantly. We think that we're a certain kind of person, and therefore we always act in certain ways. And these can be very, very difficult habits to break, but there are some tools that we can use, and I'll go into these. And then the second is, as I've mentioned briefly before, is there's just a simple protection mechanism from our ego, which goes back to, prehistoric times when we were cavemen. There would be wild animals outside our caves. If we had to go out and forage for food, we would know we could get attacked by wild animals. Perhaps there were other groups of humans out there that might attack us. And, fear would kind of keep us in check. It would probably keep us within the cave and only go out when necessary, when we needed food, when we needed actually that to survive. And that became more important than us going out of the cave and maybe being attacked by an animal or another group of people. But here's the thing again. Are we really actually going to die if we try to do something different and maybe it doesn't work out straight away, and maybe someone says to you, "I told you so"? Maybe that would feel uncomfortable. Would you be dying in that moment? If you had to get up on stage and talk in front of someone, if you had to make a YouTube channel, to make your own business online and talk on camera like this and put yourself out there and people would be watching you, and you would again fear judgment. Am I good enough? Are you really going to die from any repercussions that will come back to you? If we don't step into these fears, these ridiculous fears, quite frankly, that we have, fears that don't exist, even though they're real for you, I get that. They're real for me. But I know that they're not actually the truth. They're not really real. But if we don't step into any of our fears, then we don't grow. Remember, as I've said before, our real learning, it comes from experience. No experience means no learning. Information alone isn't enough. We know that. We can have all the information in the world, but we still have this resistance to stepping into the unknown, stepping into things that make us feel uncomfortable. But remember that information isn't enough. No growth is going to happen, and no change in our life is going to happen if we stay in that comfort zone. So you've got a choice to make. Do you want to just survive? Or do you want to thrive in life, doing something new and exciting that's in tune with your higher self? The decision is yours. But I can tell you this from personal experience, and I will always tell you from personal experience in every video that I shoot around any concepts, because I believe that talking about concepts are all good, but unless you bring it down into your own experience, then you don't really have the right to talk about concepts. But you cannot be the same person and have any change in your life. So for me, I couldn't have quit the corporate rat race and started an online business, for instance, without going through a huge amount of changes, a huge amount of transformations, which came from a huge amount of work, which I'm going to help you throughout this course. I wouldn't have been able to be free of an addiction to drugs and alcohol without the serious amount of work that I put into recovery to get well, going through a 12-step program, and now taking other addicts and alcoholics through that same process. This is work. It's grueling. We have to really dig deep and look into our darkest places. I've really had to do that to really, really grow. But this has all been very fearful. I've been very fearful of doing these things. I was extremely fearful of sharing all of my past with a sponsor to get clean from drugs and alcohol, to have someone look at me and shine a light and look at and tell me, where all my character defects are. You know, where I was wrong, where I played a part in all of these things that have happened in my life. That was difficult, but it was stepping into that fear where the real transformation happened. Now, there are several tools that we can use to work with fear, which I'm going to go through now. The main one being the simplest of all, yet the hardest, which is simply to step into it. You know, you're scared of heights, go and jump out of a plane. You know, you're scared of spiders, go and get a tarantula put in your hand. You're scared of having a YouTube channel and making videos, make a YouTube channel, make videos and put it out there. You're scared of speaking in front of people, go and speak in front of other people. As I say, this is not the easiest thing, but it is so simple. You just literally do that. But of course, for many people, and for many of you right now at the moment, when you work through your purpose and you look into implementing it, you may be faced with serious fear. And stepping into fear requires real courage. But I would recommend that you try and do this because, again, that's where this experiential, and transformational learning will happen. And when you have a radical shift by going through some transformational experience, you do start to have a very different relationship with fear. For me, quite often, I don't see fear now as fear, as clamming up, as becoming tense in my body, not being able to speak. I see it as excitement. There are butterflies. But here's the thing, doing that all the time, even when you get into a state where things become exciting rather than fearful, it takes up a lot of your energy. You know, even if you're feeling a little nervous, as you might do when you're feeling excited, it takes up a lot of energy, nervous energy, right? So going through that resistance, and resistance is something that we'll talk about in a couple of topics' time, it can be very, very tiring. So although we need to step into fear, there are other things that we can do to constantly work on, which I constantly work on. And so I'll go through these now. These ways of shifting into a non-judgmental relationship with fear. So the first is something called shadow work. So shadow work, there's a really good book on shadow work, which is by someone called Debbie Ford, which is called the Dark Side of the Light Chasers. A very good book, and I would recommend that very much indeed. Shadow work is something that I do with clients on one-to-one coaching and in group coaching as well. And this is all about shining a light on what you would call your character defects, the parts of yourself that you don't like, or quite often the parts of yourself you find that you judge in others. But what you actually find is that you actually do that, or you understand that you are capable of being like that. Because whatever anyone does and you judge them for, it's a human quality, and we're all capable of all human qualities. So we start to actually look at some of the negative aspects of ourselves, or what we perceive as negative, but we can actually find how that's positively shaped our life in some ways. So for instance, if something happened to us in the past, you know, maybe we had, I don't know, an abusive father or something like that, who used to shout at us all the time and wasn't particularly nice to us. But that kind of made us a little bit maybe obstinate and perhaps aggressive at times, maybe even to counteract that. And we see that as a bad thing. You know, we would perhaps say that, you know, perhaps being a bit closed off, being a bit aggressive isn't a particularly nice trait, right? And we can see that and see how it upsets people in certain instances. However, we could also see something like that as making us powerful in certain situations, making us be able to, I don't know, be a good negotiator or something like that. You know, there are always strengths that we can get out of all of what we perceive to be negative aspects and weaknesses. So shadow work is a really, really good thing. It's a really good way of embracing everything feeling really, really whole and fulfilled. That's really what shadow work is all about. To understand that you are complete already and you have everything in your toolbox to do anything that you want to do. So that's certainly something to do. Look into that if you're interested, in the book there. And also, if you're interested in any coaching in the future, please do get in touch. We go through quite a lot of shadow work within my coaching programs. The other thing, which I also do in my coaching programs, is to do with looking, really at the root causes of where some of this fear comes from, particularly limiting beliefs, of which there are many, but they often, like fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, all these sort of things. There are many, there are limitless really. But these all often come down to things like not feeling like you're good enough, not feeling worthy, things like that. But so when we look at these, we can do what's called neuro-linguistic programming, which is programming your neurology, the networks of neurons that fire, which link the brain to the body, emotion with thoughts. We link these together, we reprogram these, we reframe these, and I do a lot of coaching around this, and this can completely transform the way that you look at the world. So do look into NLP as well. Journaling, of course, is great. I've asked you to journal through some of these topics that I've talked about already, and continue to do that. It's an amazing practice because you start to, especially when you really sit down and just free-flowingly write, you start to really get things coming out of the subconscious. And what you can often find are certain patterns that come up time and time again. You really, really start to see them. And through journaling and finding patterns, what you're really doing is you're bringing your awareness onto those things. And bringing your awareness means that you're going to be more consciously available to affect your decisions or make better choices, actually make choices in your life rather than decisions, as we've talked about before. Another thing is to do affirmations, visualizations. We've touched on that briefly in the introduction, but we will get into that in real detail in step 4 of the Pathway to Purpose blueprint. So be aware of that and look out for affirmations and visualizations at that point. Now again, of course, information, as I said, it isn't really enough. We need to do all of these things, or put these things into practice, should I say, in the wider world to gain experience. I mean, as I say, when I talk to you in all of these modules, in all of these videos, I try and put my own experience into this to bring the concepts from a conceptual nature into the concrete, into something real that is tangible, that you can understand. So make sure that you do that for yourself as well, because that's where the real learning will take place. So lastly, one of the great things for really moving forward and overcoming fears and being able to actually actively go out and put things into practice and get this experiential and transformational learning in place for yourself is to be accountable to other people. Accountability is a fantastic thing. Again, we'll get into this more deeply in the second half of this course, especially in the maintenance part of the Pathway to Purpose process, because accountability really helps you to keep going with things, keeps pushing you out of your comfort zone. So this can be done in several ways. It can be done through one-to-one or group coaching with me. Certainly can be done through the Facebook group. So make sure that you join the Facebook group. There are often links on all of these pages. There will be one below the video here to the Facebook group, or you can join it from emails that are sent to you. Make sure you get in there, share what you're fearful of at the moment, share your transformations. You can hook up with people and, get into private conversations with people, get accountability partners. This is extremely important for sustaining any kind of transformation, especially when it's working through fears. Okay, so I shall catch you in the next video where we're going to talk further about limiting beliefs. So if you want to see more videos like this and truly understand how this all fits into finding your life's purpose and implementing it, then you can check out my course by that very same title on Udemy by clicking on the link in the description below. I will take you from the conception of a new life to a state of being where you will create exactly the life you want and understand how to get paid for it. So click the link in the description below if that sounds like something you'd like to pursue. I'll see you soon.